Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. US Secretary of State Blinken is visiting India, and apart from meeting the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the officials, he has also expressed a desire to meet civil society leaders. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, nothing amazing. Because very often the diplomats and the officials who visit other countries meet civil society leaders. The purpose is to get a grip on the affairs that exist between the two countries. Delhi and Washington have a very curious love-hate relationship, and right from the very beginning, because in the beginning US was definitely tilted towards Pakistan, and the tilt increased to a dangerous level when President Nixon was the president, and Pakistan was nothing but a vassal state. But the ups and downs in the geopolitical situation changed, and Delhi and Washington have a very expensive new agenda for discussion. This includes not only democracy and human rights, which are a prickly subject, but it also covers Afghanistan, Indo-Pacific region, Quad, global economic institutions under reform, climate change, and most recently, waxing diplomacy. Now, we find that such a vast agenda, such an expensive agenda, that a meeting with the various officials over a couple of days is not going to matter much. Nobody can deny that there is a growing political and security cooperation in the two countries. They are expanding economic engagement, widening interface between the two societies, and very interesting footprint of Indian diaspora in the USA. And as the Indian leadership reviews US ties this week with the visiting Secretary of State, a paradox stands out. And this paradox is something which is not very commonly observed. Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and Joe Biden, US President, have already agreed on a very ambitious agenda. And this ambitious agenda covers bilateral, regional, and global cooperation between India and USA. And that ambition is in turn not something very instinctive. It's based on unprecedented convergence of Indian and American national interest. Curiously, the history has taken a turn. And India, which has very close ties with Russia, still maintains those ties. But the worsening ties with China and the conflict between the elephant and the dragon, which I have explained in my book, The Elephant and the Dragon, is compelling India and USA to converge their resources and their direction. But the discourse within the Indian strategic community continues to be anxious. Since 1990s, India and USA have come a long way. Much water has flown in the rivers, and there's a growing political and security cooperation among the two countries. And this was increased immensely by Trump, as a matter of fact. Now, expanding economic engagement, widening interface between the two societies, and as I said earlier, the most important is that the Indian diaspora in USA is becoming very vocal and intensifying its footprints on the US. So some of the questions that animate the political thinkers has not changed since 1990s. This is curious. Does the US president want to meditate still on Kashmir? Will the Americans talk of democracy and human rights? that might derail Delhi's relationship with Washington. The Indian debate is often trapped between the new and the contradictory fears. Can Delhi really trust USA to give full support in coping with China challenge? At the same time, Delhi also worries that USA might be trying to entrap India into becoming a vassal state or its alliance, establishing alliance. While Delhi expects USA to give ironclad guarantees on supporting India, the India insists that Delhi will never enter into an alliance with USA. So this is a curious thing. And USA has always wanted alliance. Let's not forget that. But every difference with the US, even formal allies don't agree on everything in the world. Let's be very clear. You can be allies and still there can be some point of reference. But it acquires a larger than life significance in India. That's an important thing. India's relative weight in the international system continues to grow. That nobody can deny. And nobody can check it. It creates room for much talks, give and take between India and USA. But then problem is a small syndrome that continues to grip the foreign policy elite. The condition on the economic front is similar. India is now the sixth largest economy in the world. And that is an unending concern about USA about imposing globalization on Delhi. Delhi doesn't want to be imposed on as far as its economic policy is concerned. And India salience for solution to climate change has increased. Delhi's debate remains defensive. And that's why you might have noticed India is the only country which has not gone to the climate change conference being held today in London. 51 countries were invited. 50 are going. India is the only country which has not gone, saying that we have already given our ideas. So while the government seems quite self-assured in dealing with differences that were traditionally apparently as irreconcilable, there is a gap between Indian policy and discourse. Now, part of the problem is with the Indian elites' entrenched ideological suspicion of USA since independence, and rightly so. But then successive prime ministers in the last few decades, Rajiv, Narendra Modi, even Manmohan, they invested political capital in improving ties with USA, and they did so despite resistance in the political class and in the bureaucracy. I know. Bureaucrats were not very happy when Rajiv changed the direction. And the suspicion lingers on. It's not removed. There are many reasons why the Indian debate cannot keep pace with the policy changes as the US is concerned. For one, the narrow focus on bilateral precludes an assessment of the larger forces that American domestic and international policies shape. That in turn limits the appreciation of new possibilities for bilateral relationship. And there's a crux of problem. It's not easy to identify policy signals because Washington has noisy debates and the policy signals are lost in the cacophony of noise. Senate says one thing, House of Representatives comes up with another. The presidential White House has a different perception. Despite the fact that the Democrats control all the three, there are discordant noises, even in Democratic Party. And curiously, some people of Indian origin are the most vocal critics of India. So that is difficult to identify what the real situation is. But those nations with big stake, who want a big stake with USA, have no choice but to develop the capacity to see the bigger picture, even in the apparent chaos that envelops American policy making. The second problem is, which reinforces this issue, Delhi's underinvestment in public understanding of American society. Unlike India, Russia and China, India hasn't done that, but Russia and China and India can learn from that, have put large resources in American studies at their universities and think tanks. The Indian government and the private sector has to address this gap. And the sooner they do, the better it is. Through the last 6 months of Biden presidency, and now he is the president, you can't deny, there has been little informed debate in India on the extraordinary policy shifts that are unfolding in Washington. There's a sea change in Washington. And India still has to wake up to the changed reality. Now, let's see what is happening. On the domestic front, Biden has broken from neoliberal economic policies initiated under Ronald Reagan in 1980s. And those policies were sustained by Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, both Democrats. And Biden is saying goodbye to them. Now, so India has to change its policies if it wants to continue the relationship. And if the economic policy drift in the last 4 decades was to the right, Biden is moving to the left, raising taxes, increasing public spending, addressing the problem of sharp economic inequality. Now, Biden had joined Trump in questioning America's uncritical economic globalization in the past. Both have the same idea. The words may be different, but the reality is the same. Trump talked of putting America first. Biden wants to make sure that America's foreign and economic policies serve the US middle class. If the past American policy was to open financial assistance and financial markets to everywhere, the Wall Street, the Biden's top advisors say it's not the job of White House to open the international doors for Goldman Sachs. So the governmental support to the globalization is decreasing. And when the political support decreases, that automatically puts a brake. Then there's a big change in foreign policy. I am amazed. The people have not seen how the foreign policy of US is changing. Biden's emphasis on rebooting the American economy, including a very active industrial policy, is driven in part to meet the challenge of China. That should not be missed. Russia is not that big a challenge today as China is. And Biden has concluded that 4 decades of American uncritical engagement with China must be reconstituted into a firm policy. From Nixon onward, it was all China, 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 give support to China. The reason? Offset Russia. No, that didn't happen. Russia was not offset. As Khrushchev had said at one time, Chinese are our brothers, but Indians are our friends. So, whatever America might do, America remains the great Saturn, the imperialist dog, and all that. So they might say, okay, we want to be friendly, but they want to exploit America for economic needs. So Biden has bidden goodbye to that. And he wants a policy to face the Chinese challenge. And his decision to respond effectively to Chinese aggressive policies has resulted in the formation of Quad in the Indo-Pacific region. He cannot do anything without the support and active help of India. And here he is supported by the Republican Party also. So Biden is focused on the traditional US alliances to present a united front against China. And he wants India to be its flag bearer. Now, America's new orientation under Biden has opened much space for India to widen and deepen its ties with Washington. But there's a stumbling block. And the stumbling block is the human rights and democracy. There's a comment by Mr. Singh Jaspal that there seems to be some disturbance in the background. Well, there might be something in between, but I am in a closed room and there is no noise coming, Mr. Jaspal. Thank you. Anyway. Now, democracy is the bedrock of American founding ideology. But living up to that ideal at home and abroad has not been easy for USA. And for the last 2 centuries, USA earlier was confined within and now it's going out. But the situation cannot be denied that wherever it has gone to enforce democracy, it has failed. Be it Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Middle East, anywhere. Because you cannot force. So at home also it's in the new efforts to revitalize American democracy. And he recognizes that renewing American democracy is the most powerful way of supporting democracy around the world. So what he is doing is he is underlying the importance of revitalizing, and there's a comment by Sujit Sundaraj. There's a fine delivery, so that Mr. Singh Jaspal's comment possibly was something local. Thank you. Now, what is problem is that institutional and systemic racism within America is being faced by Biden, and that is reducing the mindless gun violence, which is, again, I don't agree to that, because gun violence is a part of the system. So Biden's efforts, however, have valuable lessons for reforming Indian democracy. Delhi and Washington will have much to discuss the new surveillance technologies. We have seen the Pegasus storm in India, and there was nothing wrong with that. Since the beginning of the world, surveillance has been a part, intelligence has been a part of governance and management. You can't do without that. So the new technologies which are coming have to be understood in that context. Now, Washington has long struggled to reconcile its commitment to promote democracy with the pursuit of national interest abroad. So basically they wanted to promote Americanism. And that's why, the beautiful novel by Graham Greene, The Quiet American, is very pertinent. The exclusive American focus on democracy promotion has been very rare. It was not there before Second World War at all, but has been very costly to USA, and it has been 100% unsuccessful. India's own experience in trying to impose democracy has also met with failure. It tried in Nepal, it failed miserably. But it has been successful in Bangladesh. It has been successful in Sri Lanka. So India has been much more successful, and that's why I wrote an article that America should learn from India the art of influencing neighbors. India's neighbors, it has a bad relationship with Pakistan and China, but there's an excellent relationship with Bhutan, which Bhutan and Nepal is okay, average. Even with Myanmar, where there has been a coup, India hasn't lost its hold on that. So India and Washington have many notes to exchange on democracy and human rights. And what they deem human rights may not be deemed human rights in India. But discussion is only one part of the expensive agenda. So what USA has got to do is to understand the Indian attitude, Indian culture, and try not to use prickly thorns. Those thorns would prick America more. And this discussion should be confined to the new agenda from Afghanistan to Indo-Pacific, reforming global economic institutions, addressing climate change, vaccine diplomacy, and new technologies that beckon India and USA. That's it. The question of the democratic systems and everything is being dealt in India with the institutions. And India has excellent institutions, whether it's judiciary or media. They are very strong and they are anti-government. Let's not deny that. So they will lose no opportunity to ensure that the democratic systems are upheld. As USA and India intensify their bilateral cooperation, and that is evident in the discussion that Blinken is having with the government leaders and the community leaders, the two sides will hopefully turn this Indo-US partnership. And I trust that this will not be a perennial curiosity for the people, but it will become a quotidian affair. And it has to be quotidian affairs, a routine matter, which should be taken as the days pass. One thing at a time, slowly and steadily, and not too much of a hype, not too much of despondency, not too much of exuberance. As I very clearly said, it has to be taken as a quotidian affair. And if we take it as that, we can have a stable relationship with USA. Thank you.